So it's finally time to talk North Carolina basketball and especially Hubert Davis. This has not been a very fun season for North Carolina fans. I can say that personally, me, after the first couple of games, I haven't really watched much of the basketball team. I've just been so disappointed. I've been so disappointed in the product that we saw on the court. And I'm typically never like that. Normally, I'm one of those ride or die kind of guys. Even the year that we didn't go to the NCAA tournament a couple of years ago, I've watched about every single game. But this year, it's not been a very fun year. And I've saw the comments online. I've saw the Twitter back and forths. I have saw the YouTube videos that have come out, the comments from not only uh, analysts, but also Tar Heel legends, kind of like a Joel Berry on the ACC network. I've saw so many people talking about this, and I feel like it's finally time as a fan for me to get my opinion out on this site. We like to talk everything on here: Carolina basketball, football, baseball. Right here in a couple of weeks, but it's a hard time as a North Carolina basketball fan, especially after what happened this past Saturday night, and that was being the Duke game that took place out there in Durham. And whether we like to admit it or not, it's time to talk about Hubert Davis and his job security. Now, you may not agree with that. You may think that's right or wrong, but and every person has their opinion. But I'm going to give my opinion today, and I'm not saying my opinion's right or wrong. It's just my personal opinion, and I want to preface that before we get into anything that we're getting ready to talk about now. But last year, I put out a video talking about Hubert Davis, and the question was in the thumbnail of the video, is Hubert Davis the guy for UNC? Now, that video stirred up a lot of trouble, and I went through and I broke down each and every one of the years before last year about Hubert Davis and his coaching ability and what's happened during the seasons. And they went from good to really bad to last year ended up being a pretty good team. Last year, I won seed in the NCAA tournament, made it down to Sweet 16 against Alabama, and it was a good year. You were an ACC runner-up. I thought you should have won that ACC championship myself, but credit to NC State. They caught it. They caught a hot streak right there, and they rode it all the way to the Final Four. And then also going into the NCAA tournament, played great. RJ Davis, our ACC Player of the Year. And it was just an awesome season last year. Had some great pieces that you brought into the portal, Harrison Ingram and Cormac Ryan, and it paid big-time dividends to you. But that video sparked a lot of backlash in the comments, and I looked at all of it. I've saw all of that stuff. But in that video, I went through and I broke down everything, and really my answer was yes, I did believe that he was the guy for the job, considering that the last year was really his first year outside of Armando Bacot and RJ Davis, that it was his team, his recruits, his guys that he brought in with him, and the roster that he constructed. And I thought that was he done a really good job with last year's roster and the transfer portal. But the question comes, what's going to happen the following year, meaning this year? This would be the first year that outside of RJ Davis, that this team would be entirely made up of his people, his schemes, and everything. And I have to say, he let us down. He let me down. I'll put it to you that way. You knew that Armando Bacot was going to be gone. You knew that the only person you may have had left was RJ Davis. You might not even had him. You didn't know that for sure at the time. You weren't going to have a Harrison Ingram. You know you were going to have a Cormac Ryan. And even though you did get an Ian Jackson and a Drake Powell, and credit to you for getting those guys, no bigs really to replace him. James Brown is a guy that was kind of looked at as a project coming in. And thankfully, he has come out and he has showed a lot of energy and a lot of poise, and he's presented some time of post presence. You relying a little too much on the transfer portal. And it kind of feels to me that we are getting to the spot where North Carolina just found itself with Mac Brown, and we know how that ended up. And again, you may not think that's fair. Your opinion is your opinion. Like I said, this one's just mine. I look at this team and to see the inconsistencies, the consistent inconsistencies, let's put it that way. As Joel Berry said on ACC Network last night, as of the time I'm recording this video, he said, it's like a roller coaster. You don't know what you're going to get. You go from the first year being the national championship, and that's really covering up what that season was like. It was not a great season for North Carolina. A lot of bad turmoil, and it was his first year. I give him a little bit of a pass for that. You got hot at the right time. Brady Manick ended up being a diamond in the rough, and you made your way down to the NCAA tournament, beat Duke, and just had some highlight plays and highlight season that year. That was amazing. Give credit to Hubert to figuring it out and getting them there. I think that's a huge part of it. But also the following year being, preseason number one coming into the season, all returners are back. You bring in a Pete Nance, and the offense looks stagnant. It doesn't move. It's just kind of a very similar situation to we find ourselves in right now, and what I like to call dribble, 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 dribble panic. You found yourself seeing that, and you didn't even make the tournament that year. It was a piss poor season for you. You lost some bad games. You got swept by Duke, got embarrassed, and it was just not a good year for you. Then you come out last year. And you come out last year, and Armando's back. Caleb Love transfers out. RJ Davis is back. And you bring in some great transfers, some guys that, Harrison Ingram, a guy that North Carolina really heavily went after when he was, coming out of high school to begin with. You get him in, you get Cormac Ryan in, you get, your pieces together. You build yourself a good basketball team. Jay Witt comes in, and you find yourselves in the national tournament. But the problem I'm seeing here is even in those games, even with that team, a lot of inconsistencies. Coaching seems like guys weren't ready to play games at times, and you relied heavily on at Harrison or an Armando to be the guy that gets the team up, gets the team excited, and thankfully, a guy like RJ Davis is pretty good freelancing, or else, and Harrison was too. Harrison and Cormac were all pretty good freelancing as well. That it kind of covered up some of the glaring issues that Carolina had, and we saw that get exposed when you face a team like an Alabama in the Sweet 16, and even in the ACC championship game when you went up against NC State, and they just were able to keep you, to hold you down, and force you to have to play off of one another. And I felt like it got exposed there. And you fast forward all of that to this year, where roster construction is a huge issue. North Carolina is one of the smallest teams in the country. I think, I believe Alan read this stat off to me, and I could be wrong. I could very well be wrong, so don't quote me on this. But like North Carolina in the country is somewhere up in the hundreds in the smallest teams in the country, and that's not good. That is something that is very baffling to me. North Carolina has never really been a small team. North Carolina is normally big wing players, bouncy guys. You got your Danny Greens, your Justin Jacksons, for that matter, your Theo Pensons, all we could name names left, right, and center. I'm just talking ones in more recent history. But normally North Carolina is constructed with some big guys. Rebounding is Carolina's philosophy. We know that. I think we've all heard the story from Raymond Felton when he talked about Roy Williams coming in and saying, "Oh, you guys like playing offense? Well, guess what? Taking the hoops off the backboards. Let's learn to play defense and rebound. That's what we're all about here. We're going to do that first and foremost. The energy, the effortness, the connectivity on the court. Coaches got to help control that, and it feels like this year that has been a major, piece that is missing. You've got players coming out talking to insiders after games saying, we just don't trust each other. We just don't. We got to trust each other more. We don't know how to, when a set breaks down, we don't know how to freelance. Now that's a problem. Now don't get me wrong. Hubert Davis has some good set plays, but you got to teach your guys to play off of one another. That's what camp is for. That's what every practice is for, and building up that continuity with the team, getting them together. When a play breaks down, how do we operate, and teaching them that. That was something that Roy Williams was so good at. And North Carolina, mostly in Roy Williams's time, was a freelancing team, and we saw that consistently, if I can speak words. But you saw that consistently every single year. Look at the best teams in the country this year. When a play breaks down, when a set breaks down, some teams very rarely even go to the sets. Quite frankly, you look at the Duke game the other night. How many set plays did they run? It's not that many. It really wasn't that many. They are a good team that can play off of one another, that can feed off of one another. You see this team come in, and you see the consistently being ill prepared to start games. To start the season, what were we doing? Getting up, game would start, you're down 10-2 in no time. And then you're trying to claw your way back. Look at the Dayton game that we won. You had to come back from, I think it was 20 that game, 18, 21, something like that, somewhere in that nature. 18 to 21 points in that game you had to come back to win that game from. The Florida game, you came back and you almost won. Kansas, you almost won. You had to come back. You have to come back. You have to come back. You have to come back. Now they flipped it. They can start good, but they can't end well. The ill substitutions at times, when a lineup is on the court and they're getting good run, Hubert likes to sub. My question is this: why in the world are we doing this? Hubert Davis is the head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels, and that is a hot spot. We know what North Carolina is all about. He knows what North Carolina is all about. He was a great player for Carolina, a great player in the NBA. He understands that he was on the sideline with Roy Williams for 9 years before he did this, before he became a head coach. Being the Carolina basketball coach comes with a lot. And it feels to me that the locker room, he may be losing this locker room a little bit. Look, I personally believe that Hubert is a good coach. I really do believe that he's a good coach. I don't think he's a bad coach. By any stretch of the imagination, I do believe that he is a good head coach. But with the University of North Carolina and what this brand stands for, what the history of this basketball organization, group, ball club, whatever you want to say, stands for, what its tendencies are, what its aspirations are every single year, what its expectations are. I know for a fact that there's a lot of people that aren't happy right now on the inside and are looking potentially to make a change. And that is going to be Hubert if it happens. I think Hubert gets another season. Hubert Davis is one heck of a recruiter. That is for sure. I don't think anybody can take that away from him. He's a recruiter. You look at this year's recruiting class, and this is kind of like a Carolina class. And I like that. That's what we need to get back to. And maybe Hubert is starting to see that, and starting to see that, hey, maybe the small ball lineup that I was going for isn't working. Maybe this was just a bad idea. This is an extremely bad idea. Don't get me wrong, especially in today's college basketball. And I'm surprised that our team is constructed like that after the Alabama loss. That's just me. But seeing his roster construction, seeing his lack of offensive efficiency and scheming, I think that's a huge part of this. Stuff like this on a yearly basis and this is the problem. This is what we've saw. You're starting to see some things become consistent issues. And if that happens and it continues to result in this right here, higher ups are going to look at him and say no confidence, because they're not used to that. And Carolina's a brand that's going to attract people. We understand the NIL situation, and they did announce that they're going to be hiring a GM. Hubert Davis did say that, and I believe that could absolutely help him big time. You look at another team like Duke that's had a GM for a couple of years and whatnot. So Shire goes after these guys. They can handle the logistics of it. We're seeing this with football now with Bill Belichick and Michael Lombardi. But I believe this conversation about Hubert's job is coming up more and more. Scott Van Pelt talked about this the other night. He says, I love Hubert Davis to death, but for them to be okay with being okay. And I thought that stood out to me a whole lot. And where this team goes, I'm honestly not sure. To be honest with you, if the season ended, and I do not expect them to make the tournament, I don't think any Carolina fan should. Even their potential wins that they could have are diminishing returns at this point. Outside of the Clemson game, the Clemson game seems to be the best one, and the second Duke game, of course. But Pitt is falling off. Clemson's held strong. Florida State, they haven't done very well. So really, you got Clemson and you got Duke, and Clemson and Duke, and you got to win both of those games. I don't see them. I can honestly say I see them winning either one of those games right now. I just don't think that. I don't think this is a good basketball team. I don't think it's a good basketball team, and I believe it's embodied from the head coach down. The attitude of the head coach comes in, and it's just you see this group is talented. This group is extremely talented. That you can't take away from them. That is for sure. But it's just not being used properly. And you see the different lineup changes. You see all the different lineups on the floor, searching for answers, and there are none. Then you start to the problem I have is you start to. It feels like, hey, maybe they're catching the rhythm right here, and then you sub out, and then you put so much on a true freshman and Ian Jackson, and Ian Jackson's a superstar. Captain Jack is a superstar. Drake Powell's played great, but this team this team collectively doesn't play well together, and I believe that I don't believe it would surprise me one bit if we got to the end of this season and they announced that they were getting rid of Hubert Davis. It also wouldn't surprise me if they get to the end of the season and he is still the head coach and goes in for another season with Caleb Wilson and Dennis and golly, I forgot the other guy by now. Derek Dixon. There we go. This is a fragile time. This is a very crucial time for this basketball program, because if they don't get this thing figured out and get some consistency back on the court, for Hubert Davis's sake, he ain't gonna be around much longer. And that's just that might not be fair. That's just what is. That's just the truth behind it all. And being a part of this business, I guess you could say, and covering, I ain't gonna say covering, but being a fan and doing this and doing YouTube, you get access to people, thankfully. It's blessed to say that. And the inside aren't happy. They're just not happy. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully I made some sense in all of this thing. Again, let your opinions be known down there in the comments. What do you think is going to happen with Hubert Davis? Will he continue to be the head coach after this year? Does he need to be the head coach? Do you believe it's time to move on? Fan base right now is pretty fractured and on this topic. And to see this team consistently inconsistent is not good, especially consistently inconsistent on being in the tournament. And that's the bare minimum of North Carolina. Make the tournament. That is the minimum. I don't know. It's going to be a difficult time. It's going to be an interesting time. And the drama's just getting started. We're a couple months away from the end of the season. We're actually just a little over a month away from the end of the season. So it's going to be an interesting time. I'm looking forward to seeing how it does. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here. And as always, go Heels.